Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome and thanks for logging on. We are waking up with watches, starting our weekend day off right. Everything you see here is for sale on this show. Reach out to me. I am Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for any of your pricing questions. We buy what we sell what we buy. We are always looking to acquire inventory. Sell us one watch for an entire collection. We pay cash, we pay fast, we make it a no-brainer. No upper value limit on cash paid. We will buy your entire vintage collection of Patek Philippe timepieces. We also like to trade. If you've got a watch you're not wearing, we can often offer better value on a trade than we can on an outright purchase. So to buy, trade, or sell, reach out to me. I am T Mosso at thewatchbox.com. Jumping straight into a rare breed. Now, we've seen plenty of Rolex GMTs, but in 2019, Rolex launched what might be the most opulent version of the watch in white gold with a Meteorite dial. This is the 126719 BLRO, 40 millimeters in diameter. We have Cerachrom ceramic on the bezel insert in red and blue. Of course, a Meteorite dial of iron that's oxidized and then stabilized to create these unique Widmanstätten patterns. No two of these watches will be exactly alike. We have a bezel that rotates bidirectionally, allowing you to calculate a third time zone. The watch does have two independent time zones on the dial. One hand, the 12-hour hand, moves independently as you travel through different time zones. Note the watch continues ticking, minutes, and the secondary time zone not affected. Now you pull the crown out all the way, you activate hacking seconds. Now I can set everything. I can set the 24-hour hand, I can set the local hand. One feature I really enjoy is the use of a white gold frame around the date. That gives it an element of refinement. It's not just a sheer cut through the dial. And again, the dial is meteorite iron, literally from out of this world. Gray gold, a white gold alloy that never needs to be plated. That's the only kind Rolex uses. Oyster bracelet. We've got a clasp that has two locking factors. There's the first one, which is the clamshell, and then I have the spring-loaded lift lock system with a beacon to hook internally. I lift that, I open it up internally. Thick gauge, white gold. I have a 5mm in-out easy-link tool-free adjustment system. Very snappy, sharp, gives me a lot of flexibility on the fly without tools. And then there are three divots, or three pairs of divots, I should say, drilled inside the clasp that give you additional adjustment alongside the removable links, the easy link. You've got those divots, so plenty of flexibility. Although it is a pilot's watch inspired by the 1954 GMT-Master designed for Pan-Am, the modern-day GMT-Master II is an all-arounder, highly anti-magnetic, shock-resistant, and water-resistant down to 100 meters. It's quite well loomed. As you can see, all four hands, including the second time zone. This is Rolex's signature chromolite blue lume. A watch that's rarely seen, definitely the poshest version of Rolex's traditional pilot watch. So let's see what else we have going on here. We've got another beautifully loomed watch from Geneva, just like the Rolex, and white gold, just like the Rolex. Do you know? Have you guessed? Can you tell just from the illuminated dial? This is the Patek Philippe reference 5172G. It came out in 2019. It was the replacement for the 5170. Now 41 millimeters. This gives us everything we want up front. A lot of times Patek will introduce a new model with yellow gold, silver dials, Roman numerals, basically a very frumpy old man style. What do people want? They seem to want dark dials, plenty of lume, and white metal cases. And Patek obliged here. We have this beautiful case with a faceted flank and then triple-tiered lugs that taper to an end point, all polished all the way around. Like the Rolex, this is gray gold, so it'll never need to be plated, and if you scratch it, it's the same color underneath. We have a lovely cambered sapphire that really gives us a vintage plexiglass look. Another vintage nod, we might call it, a little bit of an homage to Patek's own history. We have these round button turbine style tasti tondi pushers, as you would have seen on the historic from 1940s through late 1960s 1463 tasti tondi chronograph. The dial, it's a sort of granular matte blue with syringe style hands, applied white gold Arabic numerals, and in vintage fashion here we have the tachymeter scale on the dial rather than on the bezel. Action of the column wheel is world class. You can hear it, you can feel it. So crisp, one of the finest I've ever experienced. I would even put this on a slightly higher plane than the Lange Dotograph. This column wheel action is that good. You can see the movement, 29,535 PS, petite seconde, because it has a small seconds. The watch features a column wheel, which is capped and black polished in Geneva tradition. We have a lateral clutch with little golden chaton for the pivots of the driving wheels. Free sprung, 6-position adjusted. This actually has a metallic overcoil hairspring shaped by hand. These handmade overcoils are actually more expensive in Patek Philippe's universe. Likewise, lateral clutches, they only get worked on by higher-level Patek watchmakers. The lower-level Patek watchmakers and the lower-level Patek watches feature vertical clutches and silicone hairsprings, so don't always buy technology as a sign of progress. Sometimes it takes more craft knowledge and virtuosity as an artisan to build and tune an older architecture than a newer one. That's why these more expensive Patek watches feature lateral clutches and metallic overcoils. We have a little Paul and Paul wheel for the instantaneous minute jumper. This beats sway at 4 Hz at 6-position adjusted, accurate to no worse than -3 + 2 seconds per day. Yes, because people do ask, the latest Patek calibers do feature hacking seconds, and this has a 65-hour power reserve, a wonderful nubuck leather with a contrasting stitch and a suede feel. People often ask, why is nubuck suede? It's because this type of leather comes from the top of the hide, where you often have pores, bug bites, scars, and by sanding it down, you can get that top grain leather, the highest quality, without a lot of the marks from the hide on it. That's why nubuck has that wonderful velvety feel, and then a full white gold clasp. We'll throw this watch on the wrist. In fact, I'll go grab the Rolex one more time so you can see it on the wrist. I'm not sure I did a wrist shot with the Rolex, and you can see this fits beautifully. It would be appropriate for a wrist as small as 14 centimeters circumference because it's really flat, and although the over-the-top shot exaggerates the width of the watch, you could see down the barrel, the lugs are nowhere near the edge of my wrist. So 14 centimeters circumference and up. We're going to bring the Rolex back for a moment. We're going to do a wrist shot here. This is an easy watch to wear, and you can see it fits quite nicely. It is massive, though. You really feel solid center link, solid end link, thick gauge clasp, solid case back, gold bezel, Meteorite iron dial. This is one weighty watch, and just like the Patek, I could rate it for a wrist as small as 14 centimeters circumference. Let's say you like the look of the Patek, you like its basic aesthetic, but you don't love the idea of paying tens of thousands of dollars for that look. Well, you can get it with this 2022 800-piece limited edition from JLC. This is the Master Control Date, 800 pieces, 40 millimeters in stainless steel. This was the 30th anniversary of the original Master Grand Tie, the predecessor of this model, which inaugurated the Master Control series of tests at JLC. Master Control was one of the first in-house tests to go beyond the scope of the COSC. So you do have a multi-position chronometer style test, but the tolerances here are -1 + 6 seconds. Remember, COSC is -4 + 6. Also, Master Control is 1,000 hours, whereas COSC is about 2 weeks. 1,000 hours is over 41 days. You also have a fully cased-up test of the watch, which means every facet of the final delivered product is tested as part of the Master Control, including chronometry, power reserve, winding efficiency, shock resistance, overall durability, and water resistance. We have tri-Arabic numerals. We have dart-style individual hour indices, a polished frame for the date. We have half-satinated Dauphine-style hands for better contrast against this metallic sunburst blue dial base. For a dress watch, it's quite versatile. You can see plenty of looms, stainless steel, automatic winding. I'd almost describe it as more of an all-arounder than a pure dress watch. A couple of things I like. JLC now uses pull-tab, quick-release straps, so you can pop the strap off the case. And they thought of what many other brands don't, which is that you really can't strap swap if the buckle winds up stranded on the old strap. So a little push button releases the buckle. It is a double-deployment clasp. You can release the buckle from the strap with a push of a button. You can see the clasp right here. This is not a universal feature on JLC watches these days, as they tend to give you a pin buckle, even on very premium models. Another big change we've seen over the years with JLC is that we've gone from the 890 series of movements having a 38 to 43-hour power reserve to now having a 70-hour power reserve, and that's what we get with this 899 AC. So we got a free-sprung balance, ceramic rotor bearings, unidirectional winding, 70-hour power reserve, hacking seconds, quick set date, a combination of hand and mechanical finish, similar to what you'll find on an Audemars Piguet. It's definitely worth your while and a good-looking movement. We'll throw the watch on the wrist. It's just over 47 millimeters from lug to lug, and it's a very compact piece, easily worn on a wrist as small as 14 centimeters in circumference, maybe even 13.5. This should be considered a unisex option. It's wonderfully flat, fits beautifully underneath the cuff, and looks stupendous. Being steel with loom, a blue dial, this really is your all-arounder. 50 meters water resistant, which is solidly more than the dress watch standard of 30. A bit of a surprise, but JLC often offers more than necessary and more than you expect. Now, let's say you want something that is more of a traditional dress watch, but you like the idea of stainless steel for its durability. Well, for 2023, Wayco, the creator of and Revolution magazine, has created a collaboration with Laurent Ferrier called the Laurent Ferrier Classic Amazonia. Now, this previously would have been known as the Galet Micro-Rotor. It's now called the Galet Classic Micro-Rotor, and this one is the Amazonia because it has this wonderful green dial evocative of the verdant canopy of the Amazon rainforest. You can see we have a metallic sector, metallic tri-Arabic numerals, two different textures and shades. There's the lighter shade outboard, the darker shade inboard, a railroad track outboard for reading the minutes off the white gold Assegai or spear-style minute hand. Likewise, for the hours, we have a double-stepped sunken subseconds. The Galet case, Galet as in a pebble, smoothed in a stream over eons. It has some soft creases, but no hard ones, and a lovely teardrop tug to its lugs with a domed bezel, partially countersunk, unbranded, onion-style crown, which is vintage-inspired. Now, on the reverse side, also vintage-inspired, as we have no Côte de Genève, as historically, in the 18th and 19th century, those generally would not have been used. You would have seen a frosted fashion, and here we have that frosting on the gilded bridges. We have a 22 karat micro rotor that sits on a polished, mirrored and beveled steel bridge. It is a silent winder with a jeweled staff for extra refinement. You really can't hear jeweled staff rotors. 72-hour power reserve. We have a 3 hertz beat rate, 6 position adjustment, and a free sprung balance. That's a formidable combination for precision and durability. 35 pivot jewels. You can see the balance is both free sprung and equipped with an overcoil, so it'll keep consistent time in any position. And then you can also see underneath nickel phosphorus escape wheels. There's no Swiss lever here. This is like Breguet's 1802 natural escapement. You can see the little columns on the visible escape wheel, and those are created by Liga technique, galvanic lithography, to build up the material from nickel phosphorus. So with no Swiss lever, the 2 wheels impulse the balance only in its direction of travel, and they impulse the balance directly rather than transmitting their force through the lever. So this is a very efficient system that improves accuracy, reduces maintenance, and increases power reserve. Take a look. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 sharp interior angles. 4 of them are on the brass bridges. You can see where 2 bevels meet in a sharp crease, and then you can see 4 of them are in the interior of the skeletonized steel and black polished balance cock. Deeply impressive to execute that within the confines of the steel structure and to do it in steel, which is a very hard material. This watch is surprisingly high-tech despite its classical appearance, and of course one of only 15. We have a lovely calfskin with a contrasting stitch, and on the bottom Alcantara, a super high-end synthetic suede used in the headliner of cars like Rolls-Royce, Bentley, Aston Martin. It's also used on the touch points of super high-performance cars like Ferrari, perhaps a Lamborghini, Pagani, Koenigsegg. You can almost always get Alcantara as a upcharge option on cars like that. Now, it's a 40mm watch. We'll take a look at it on my wrist. It wears nicely. This is my idea of a dress watch, and a great one, and it's extremely comfortable. Taking a quick look, you can see the lugs are nowhere near the edge of my wrist. I would recommend this watch for a wrist as small as 14 centimeters in circumference. You can see relatively flat, just over 11 millimeters, and nicely sloped. A sleeve will have no trouble riding up over the side of this watch. A wonderful take on a modern dress watch. I would even say a sporty take on a modern dress watch, all in steel. Bethune remains my favorite watch brand because almost every watch they make gets me excited, and almost every watch they make can be described as a grail watch. Every once in a while, Bethune gets sentimental, and it brings back something old from within its collection. Most recently, we've seen with the DB8 Chronograph, but back in 2011, Bethune paid homage to the 2003 DB10 with the re-edition of the DB10. This is the DB10 re-edition. The original watch was made in 38 pieces in white gold and rose gold. The re-edition was made in 40 pieces, 20 in white gold, as you see here, and 20 in rose gold, so production was very scarce. Now, this is the original DB1 case shape, which was generally shared by Bethune references up until the DB20. So you can see it's a round case. It has relatively conventional lugs, a domed bezel. It's all of high polish and white gold, and unbrowned round double knurled crown. We have these ogival or bullet tip cabochon on the end of the lugs, a design element that's still in vestigial form on a lot of de Bethune watches today. And you can see that today de Bethune making all the parts of the watch. That wasn't in the case in 2003. It is the case now. De Bethune using rose lathe work to create a fish scale pattern on the outer edge of the dial and a lovely billowing rosette. So this is real rose lathe guilloche done in-house. The original DB10 did not have a radial date, but the DB10 re-edition does. And as you can see, that radial date at center has a quick set system, so you can rapidly set the date and have a little bit of fun with your watch while you do so. It is automatic winding with a new movement. The original did not feature this. This is the caliber 1024 automatic winding with 2 barrels, a 4 hertz beat rate, and a 6-day power reserve. Again, only 20 of these were made. You can see a full balance bridge for bracing the balance against shock, and then a snailing as the eccentric screw for the fine adjustment mechanism. You can see the counter tension provided by the spring on the opposite side, an index for keeping track of the adjustment. Super fine adjustment can be made here. First, using Etikron for timing and beat error, and then using the snail cam for super fine adjustments of less than 5 seconds per 24 hours. Note the use of both media blasting and brushing across the surface of the barrel bridge. And then you can see on the balance bridge, there's mirrored anglage on the edge of the regulator as well as the bridge itself, and black polish on the spring, the regulator, and the snail cam, as well as all the screw heads. A really cool watch made in extremely small numbers. This DB10 re-edition is a bit of a modern fan favorite for de Bethune fans because it gives you all of that manufacturer goodness of dial, case, and movement with significantly greater technical capability than the original watch, but it gives it to you in a package that for a lot of folks is more approachable than the avant-garde DB28s and 27s and 29s. This is a very wearable watch that would look great in a collection that includes Kari Voutilainen, Moritz Grossman, Moser, FP Journe. If you're that kind of independent brand collector, this is the indie watch for you. Now, if you want to take a step a little bit further into the modern era, in 2012, de Bethune launched this, which is the DB25 Moonphase Starry Sky. It's a beautiful 44 millimeters in white gold and surprisingly only 12.8 millimeters thick. It's not as big as you think. 50.5 millimeters from lug tip to lug tip. Now, of course, I mentioned those little ogival bullet tip lugs are still around. You can see a little vestigial element of them at the end of the lugs. Rolling around to the dial side, the dial is made of mirror polished grade 5 titanium, which is then fired to turn it blue, and we have polished modified Breguet hands. You can see they've been arced up and over, particularly to clear the toroidal track for the hours. A little polished titanium cabochon for the hours. We have a Moonphase made of 1/2 blued steel and 1/2 white palladium. And you can see that the watch has a quick set system that allows you to rapidly cycle the Moonphase. It is a sphere, and you can see the 1/2 that's blued steel and the 1/2 that's white palladium. The de Bethune Moonphase, once set, is accurate to 122 years before it needs to be reset. Now you can see on the dial we have stars, including stars that form constellations. Those are actually little dowels of white gold that are inserted into drillings in the dial to create any star or constellation pattern you want, such as Orion, for example. So those are actually three-dimensional. You can see that well from this angle. On the reverse side, expect to be blinded. This movement, entirely black polished, the whole thing. Not a regulator, not a screw, all of the bridges and plates, and you can see that the bridge itself, Greubel Forsey fashion, has been continuously rounded and mirror polished. We have 1, 2, 3 shock protection systems. That's called triple parachute, patented. 2 mainspring barrels, 6 days of power reserve, self-adjusting, and they cannot accidentally be overwound. We have a little power reserve indicator that goes from up to down. See the index right there? It hides at the bottom of the dial. And then we have the 2010 version of de Bethune's ever-evolving patented balance wheel. Here, a solid disc of silicon with an aerodynamic rim of white gold to put as much of the mass of the wheel in the rim as possible to reduce the effect of aerodynamic drag on timing and to reduce the effect of temperature change on timing. If you look carefully, it actually gives up the game right here. There is a silicon balance wheel of de Bethune's own design, and that helps to reduce friction and improve performance in between servicings. No fewer than 6 patents protect this watch, which again, dial movement and case is all made in-house by de Bethune. And they don't get the 6-day power reserve by cutting back the beat rate. It's still a 4 hertz, 8 beat per second movement. Not only is it entirely black polished, but if you look carefully, you can see that the mirrored anglage on the edge of the barrel bridge and the barrel bridge cap, beautifully rounded and broad, all screw heads black polished. We have solarization on the barrels. Although de Bethune watches often are described as avant-garde, even space age, they respect the traditional finish and the craft arts that go into making beautifully traditional Swiss watches. And of course, de Bethune probably only going to make about 200 to 250 watches this year. They just turned over 3,000 watches in the entire history of the company just recently, and they were founded in 2002, so exclusivity is assured. Speaking of which, back in 2019, Greubel Forsey, at the time making about 150 watches a year, announced the Handmade One, a watch to be created entirely by hand using techniques and tools that would have been available at the end of the 18th century and the beginning of the 19th. Not used electrospark erosion, CNC milling, anything automated beyond what was necessary to create the pivot stones, the jewels of the movement, and the sapphires that cover the case. So this is the Handmade One. At a time when Greubel Forsey could only make 150 watches a year, partly automating that process, Greubel Forsey could only make 2 to 3 of these per year with entirely manual process, including cutting wheels, including cutting and hand finishing screws from bare blanks of steel. Everything in this watch handcrafted. The legacy of the Naissance d'une Montre project, where a watchmaker would be sponsored to learn and master all of the traditional arts of hand craftsmanship and then teach those as a sort of compensation, giving back for the education he received. Greubel Forsey taking advantage of those lessons learned and launching this watch. 43.5 millimeters in diameter, it's 52 millimeters lug to lug and 14 millimeters thick. The case is handcrafted, yes, hand cut. We have a outer scale and an inner scale for reading the time. Both of those are handcrafted Grand Faux enamel. The tourbillon cage, 0.521 grams with 69 individual parts. It is free sprung with an overcoil, but it took 4 times as long to make this tourbillon cage because CNC milling was not used. Look at the half bridge for the tourbillon. It's polished and satinated on every facet. You can see rounded and rolled across its top. The bridges have been frosted with a wire brush, because historically, again, Côte de Genève would not have been used in the late 18th, early 19th century. You can see that the hands are fire-blued steel, that the edge of the bridge for the barrel has been fully mirror polished all the way down to its base. They only make 2 to 3 a year, and they always tell you what year the example was made. This one was made in 2022. It was one of 3 made that year. Manual wind with a spectacular click action. The watch has a similarly vintage-inspired finishing on the reverse of the case. You can see that the wheels have been internally beveled, that the click has been mirrored, a solid gold Greubel Forsey nameplate, and a solid gold 2022 marker. Each of these finger bridges with 4 sharp interior angles. This is the epitome of hand craftsmanship, and the feel and the sound of winding this watch better than any other I've ever experienced. So, what could possibly top that as our final watch of the episode? Well, you're going to have to guess what's in the box. It's like they say during the Blue Oyster Cult concerts before playing Godzilla, I hear something big coming this way now, and indeed I do. Inside the box, it's a box. It's a box in a box. But what could possibly be inside that box? Beautifully made. You can see traditionally lined with metal hardware and beautifully varnished. Inside, we have ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba. Can you hear it? The Patek Philippe, reference 1215, personal marine chronometer. From 1970 through the mid-1980s, Patek Philippe offered personally tailored marine chronometers with what were at the time extraordinarily accurate quartz calibers. These were the last purpose-built deck navigation clocks in the pre-GPS era, and while they were still offered for backup navigation purposes, they were also made to be tailored for high-end Patek Philippe customers who wanted the ultimate brass ring decoration for their desk, their mantle, or their shelves. So you can see Dr. Arthur R. Siegel received this one back in the mid-70s. It uses a caliber 33QZ, which is accurate to plus or minus 0.1 second a day. Remember, a COSC mechanical chronometer is plus 6 minus 4 per 24 hours. This is a watch that could be potentially accurate to 1 to 3 seconds per month, and an extraordinary feat of mechanical and electrical engineering. It features a super sharp jumping second, and the hands are so large you can actually see the minute hand jumping along with the seconds hand. That watch, powered by D-cell batteries inside, I guess we shouldn't call it a watch, we should call it a clock, and it comes with all of the paperwork that would have originally been included with the watch. We have the guarantee certificate. You can see back in the day this would have featured the imprimatur of Henri Stern. This is reference 1215 HF. You can see all of the original documentation, everything you would have had inside the box had you been Dr. Arthur R. Siegel back in the day. And even a little bit of a guide in terms of how to use the watch. They set you up in several languages. First, you can see there's a numerical key, and then here we go, the English language descriptions of technological specifications. That's the mechanical and electronic spec, and then in terms of how to run it, set it, and keep it going, all of this. It even has a quartz trimmer built in, so as the quartz crystal drifts over time, the watch has a built-in correction so you can fix that drift. That's something you find on all of the best quartz watches and clocks. An absolute stunning feat of engineering that was, in its day, one of the most accurate clocks ever made. You can see from the underside, this is what the underside of it looks like, including a little box that features some of the controls and allows you to load some of the batteries that are included. You can see the serial number right there. An absolutely stunning rarity. You hardly ever run into these Patek Philippe Naviquartz 3 desk-based quartz marine chronometers. If you like what you see here, reach out to me. I am T Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details.